And we are live. Welcome, folks, to today's episode of the Survival Podcast. That is episode 3311. I have a special guest with us today. She's an awesome gal doing awesome things. Her name is Kelsey. Kelsey, welcome to the Survival Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Or a different... I don't know what that was. We'll ignore it. It's maybe a different angle than we've come at subjects like this before. We're going to be talking about a program that you are part of called Seed to Table and how that's evolving going forward. And that's kind of really a new thing. But for people who don't know who or what a Kelsey Wigans is, kind of give us your background. Like before you were doing what you're doing now, like how did you end up here? Like what's that path look like? You're bored, spaced out in study hall back in high school. And then now you're doing this. Like, how do those two things get connected?
Sure. Yeah. Well, a little background on me. So I grew up in Tama County, Iowa. So kind of central Iowa. Grew up on a family farm. We had cattle, corn, and soybeans, and grew up in 4-H for, I was one of those people that grew up in 4-H, and I had the 10-year sticker on my report, by the time I was all said and done. And we had a little vegetable garden that I helped my mom with quite a bit, and went to college. I went to Iowa State University and studied dietetics. And I was in the College of Ag Science versus the human sciences portion, because I always felt like, there's so much to where your food comes from, and people just don't understand that. And that became really clear to me as a freshman in college. I had a lot of people from the Chicagoland area on my floor freshman year, and they just didn't understand, like, how do you milk a cow? Like what do you mean you butcher a calf to get it to your grocery store? And, what does that mean? What's a combine? And just, staying up really late talking to kids about, like, what is it like living on a farm? And that really opened my eyes to the world that people don't know what I know growing up on a farm. And I wouldn't say that I know a whole lot, but I know a lot more than most people do. And it's just crazy to think that most people don't know how food gets from a farm to your grocery store and ultimately to your table. So, but anyways, finished up at Iowa State University, got my bachelor's degree in dietetics. Then I moved on to do my master's, and we have to do a dietetic internship. So that's 3 rotations. You do food service, clinical, and a community rotation. And so I worked with the Illinois Department of Human Services for one part, and then I worked at St. John's Hospital in Springfield for the other 2. And that's kind of where I found that I really thought I was going to like clinical and doing that, but telling people that their loved one is going to die and end of life care and tube feeds and TPNs, like that wasn't my jam. And really educating people about where the food comes from, how to prepare it, hands-on cooking classes and things like that. That was really where I was successful at. My while I was finishing up my internship program, my father-in-law found this little ad in the newspaper, that said, seed to table manager at this little tiny elementary school. And it was close to where my husband's family grew up and where they're living still. And so he said, I think you'd be really good at that. And so here we are today, interviewed over Skype when that was a thing. And
oh, wow.
Then I was hired on the spot and then just started right away after my internship was over. So been doing this for almost 7 years now. And, just starting the program and running with it based on the kids and what they want to learn about. So it's been a really fun run.
So this is clearly something that the entity, the school, came up with and then sought someone to fill that in. Where did that idea have its genesis?
Sure. So the superintendent at the time, his name was Jeff Herzberg, and he was really passionate about getting kids to learn hands-on. We had a maker space, we had, 3D printer, we had robotics and things going on. And one of the big gaps, he felt like he was really passionate about food trucks and making sure that people were buying local and doing those sorts of things. And he was like, we live in the most fertile part of the United States of America, and we just aren't using it. And so they went to a school called the Muse School, MUSE, out of California, and they visited there, and they had a seed to table program. And so then a bunch of the teachers and the school board and the superintendent all thought, we need to get somebody in here to teach these things and let these kids explore with their hands and do hands-on learning. And so that's really where it stemmed from. And so it was really a whole team effort and getting a new person in here to do, because they tried to have the teachers oversee the garden, and that just was not feasible to do that. And then man a class, and all the weeding and taking care of plants just wasn't feasible for them.
Yeah. Can you give a little bit about the concept of seed to table? I mean, it's probably not a term or a phrase that many people have heard. There's all these restaurants now that are farm to table. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but you want to kind of expand on the concept itself?
Yeah. So seed to table, just the concept of that you plant seeds, you grow it out, you harvest it, you then eventually bring it to your tabletop. And then I feel like I fit in really well to this equation is, being able to prepare that food. And, the amount of cooking classes that we had to take to be a dietitian was pretty insane, but also a lot of fun, and, just exploring the whole food science realm of things too. So, but just the fact of you plant a seed, you grow it, you harvest it, bring it to your table. That's really the whole shebang there.
As local as it gets, because farm to table means different things to different people. There's no real enforcement of the term, and farm to table means the food was on a farm, now it's on the table. And it could be from a farm 2 blocks down an urban farm 2 blocks down the road, or it could be from California, and you could be in Montana, and that's not very local. And it kind of leaves an ambiguity, but seed to table is pretty clear. You started with a seed, you ended up with food. It's as local as it gets, right?
Yep. So we have a school greenhouse, and we have a garden and an orchard that we've all planted since I've been here, and built and done all that. So we have about 2/3 of an acre of a garden, 1/3 of an acre in an orchard. We have an 18 by 36 greenhouse. And then we also have added bees into the mix there too. So we have a honey house. And then we also added just over 3/4 of an acre for a pumpkin patch, and we planted our garlic out there this year. We're kind of cutting back on the pumpkin and squash realm a little bit, but we have a really long winter here, and that's when the kids are in school. And so taking the kids out to the greenhouse and getting the plants started in the greenhouse and letting them see that full term, not only just what you pick up from the store as a plant or whatever, but allowing the kids to see that, yes, you can grow that plant too, and you can grow that. And then what do you do with it once it's ready to harvest?
Awesome stuff. So what is your day-to-day task like? What was the job entail of doing this in a school?
Yeah, good question. So, built into the Seed to Table program, we're allowed to have me teach, if you want to use that term loosely, but I have my master's degree. And so I teach, for a better, lack of a better word, but half hour of a gardening class for each grade, K through 6 at our school.
Oh, wow.
So just like they have PE and music and art, they also have a gardening specials class. And so they come to me, and we ended up turning an old locker room that wasn't used anymore and turn it into a kitchen space. We call it the Learning Kitchen. And so we have stoves and countertops, and they come in here and we can cook stuff. We can go out to the greenhouse. We can go to the garden, bus over to the pumpkin patch if we need to, whatever it might be. So, it's a lot of taking care of plants, but also during the school year. So your August through May kind of time frame, having those classes in there, planning for events. I try to do a lot of events that are fundraiser based to try and support what we're doing here. And I write a lot of grants in the wintertime, just a lot of downtime where, there's only so much watering in the greenhouse that you can do, and dividing up plants and stuff. And so just a lot of grant writing and figuring out what to do for the summer.
Cool. So once this program was implemented and you're kind of the force behind it, what was the impact like on the students themselves, maybe their parents, the community at large? This is the kind of thing that I think should be in every school. In fact, we just had Cassie here in the chat say it should be taught in every school. I agree. We'll kind of get to that more toward the end too. But like, what was the impact that it had on people that were touched by it?
Yeah, definitely a big impact on the community and on the students. I feel like for a little while there, when it was a brand new booming program, when we first started, I feel like we increased our enrollment, 40% every year for the first 5 years when I was here. And I would say it's dropped off a little bit since like the newness is kind of worn off. But overall, I get kids up on stage to present on different topics. We, we call it an ag innovation showcase. So kids get to think outside of the box and create a solution to a problem within agriculture. So I get them up on stage to do that. We have a little chef's club, a gardening club, but really just getting kids interested in what they're doing, where they're at, and not necessarily just learning off of a tablet or a computer or off of a textbook. I feel like textbooks aren't a thing anymore, but worksheets and what have you, kids get to actually go out and explore with their hands and create and dig in. Yes, pun intended, I suppose, but, really, really just get in there. And, we've done things that, really based off of their interests. So that's what a lot of the exploring I do is when the kids come in for the fall semester is we explore what they're actually interested in. So whether that's hunting geese or deer or whatever, we've butchered deer, we've banded geese for part of our classes, just really diving in on what kids really want to, what they want to learn about. And so I feel like that's been really, really key, but, just also supporting a small community is really important too. We've grown stuff that we've put into the restaurants, and we actually started selling to our local grocery store this last year. So jumping through the hoops of that, there's just like a lot of things that you can do, and it just takes a creative mind and being able to work hard to get those things done too. So showing kids all of those things are really important too. So
it seems like a really important thing that we should be doing. And there seems to be like a lack of reverence for food at this point. I grew up confined in a Catholic school where we had to, say grace for every single thing we ate, even if the teacher gave us all one little piece of candy or whatever. I wasn't really into it at the time, but I do see a value and a reverence for food. And I think to a large degree, the reason we've lost that reverence for food is because we don't participate in its production anymore. When you go out in a garden, you sweat because you're working, or you take the life of an animal, or post somebody else is taking its life, and you take that animal apart into pieces. It's real. It's raw. This thing gave its life so I can have food. Right. And I think that our entire society is disconnected with it, but each generation has been further disconnected as we've drifted further. Like, avocado toast comes from Starbucks, not a tree, right? Right. You have to explain, like, there's an avocado is a fruit. It grows on a tree. It has a seeding. You take the seed, you plant it, it grows another tree. Well, why can't I grow here? Because you're in Minnesota and it's cold, right? Like, they have to grow this down, in a zone 9 or above. Well, what's that? And then, all of a sudden, this concept that, like, the thing I can't grow for myself, somebody else, somewhere else did the same type of work I did. And then it had, like, some guy drove a truck, and then some person worked in a warehouse so that I could have this thing that's from Mexico. Like, if you actually think about what brings food to our plates, even the food you and I would say, man, you probably shouldn't eat that. Let's go a little bit more nutrition. It's still an absolute miracle that food is produced. And then how many hands had to be involved to make sure that, everybody at your dinner table ate all week long. And the minute we disconnect from that, doing some piece of it ourselves, we lose that. I think there's value in buying a primal cut and cutting steaks out of it to just understand, like, it doesn't just show up this way.
Right. Definitely. And being able to have the kids be part of that, it's, eye-opening, and I honestly think life-changing for the kids. And, there's a lot of times that the parents will text me, I had no idea about this or that thing. My son or daughter came home and they told me this. And it's like, so there's things that the kids are teaching their parents and vice versa. I have some adult learning classes too that parents get involved, but, everybody's busy, but ultimately everybody has to eat every day. And so if we can get down to the root of what everybody's doing, I think we'd be all a little bit better off. And
just
be a little bit healthier.
Dig in, get down to the root. We're going to have a whole t-shirt line made by the time this interview is done.
That'd be awesome.
Seriously though, like, we've had quite a few comments already, but people like, this belongs in every school or whatever. What can parents do to get programs like this going at their schools?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest step is get a group of people together that also think the same way as you do, and really get on the same page, and then go to your school board and say, 25 of us, whatever, really think that this would be what we need to do for our students. And this is how we might see it working, or, asking your school board members or president, not just administration in the school, because ultimately in a public school setting, the administration doesn't have the final say in everything. So really going to your school board and saying, I think I have this great idea for the kids. It could support math, literacy, science, technology, all the things wrapped into the gardening program. And how could we find a way to make that work in our school, in our schedule, in our budget? Those would be the first steps, is getting grouped together, going and talking to your school board members. And then, you might have to do some things with the city if you're in city limits, especially with livestock. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
But those would be your first steps. Would talk to your school board if you're in a public school setting.
What were the challenges associated with the job itself? I know that anytime we add a little bit of government to a thing, that some things that should be really easy aren't. There's also constraints. You're also dealing with children. I mean, kids don't always want to do things that you want them to do. As a homeschooler, I'm very well aware of that. My wife more so. So what were kind of some of the day-to-day challenges with this program as its leader?
Yeah. I would say ultimately the biggest challenge is the funding for the program. The school has graciously paid me as a full-time employee up until this year. And so, that is the biggest hurdle, is getting to pay someone fairly for all the hours they put in and the materials I try to cover with different fundraisers. So you have to be a bit creative in this position to be able to think of how are you going to fundraise to do that? What's a way that you can get community involved in that? That's the bit, and going back to the food thing, I feel like everybody loves a good home cooked dinner they can come and join a community with. And so those have been some of our best fundraisers, honestly, or some of those like farm to table dinners, or we call them seed to table dinners. We have, a big harvest festival where we grow all the stuff for the meal, people free will donation, put money back into it. And that keeps quite a few of the projects going that we like to do. But yeah, ultimately the biggest, most challenging thing is the money hurdle for a lot of public schools. So that's right. Why you don't see it very often is because it's not a requirement by the State Department of Education. So
anything not required is hard to get done. And it's probably, we'll talk about this. It's also the first thing to get budget cuts too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the events? I think that the more you can do to self-fund a program, the more you can get bureaucrats on board with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we started a farmers market program that's been really successful in our community to be able to sell our extras, because a lot of it goes into the school breakfast and lunch program, but the extras that we have, which is typically a lot, you plant 8 zucchini plants and you have 587 zucchini. So you got to have a way to get rid of it.
Math, right? At least in your climate. Down here, you get 587,000 vine borers, but yeah.
Yeah. So, we had to have a way to get rid of the extras. And so the farmers market's been really successful that way. We actually dabbled into the cut flower business a little bit last year, and that was really successful, along with the squashes and pumpkins. Everybody, I feel like, gets a little bit like white girl happy come fall time. The sweaters come on, the pumpkins come out. So those have been really successful. Mother's Day plants, special planters for like succulents grow really well here. So those have been pretty successful for us to grow here and sell little plant sales. But yeah, I feel like the meals and things, those are really some of the best
Have y'all done anything with plants? Because to me, that's like the layup on revenue. Like, I can raise this tomato plant until it's mature, prune off all the blight, keep the airflow going, hard prune it, get all these tomatoes, and then I want to sell a person a pound of tomatoes and they want to haggle over $1. But I can sell them a plant this big for $3.
Yes. Yep. And we've seen that too. So we typically have like an end of the year plant sale. And so, we do like 4 packs of tomatoes, peppers that the kids all plant. I mean, free labor for all the kids. They do it part of their gardening class. And, we start, all different kinds of plants. But, the kids look through the seed catalog and they'll pick out, I want to grow this year, this year. And I kind of have like the community favorites picked out that I'm like, okay, well, we have to plant these and we have to plant so many And our greenhouse only has so much space too. So we kind of play that a little bit too. But I mean, yes, but around here, we're in a really low income neighborhood, but people really like to grow their own food. So instead of $3 for a 4-pack, we get $1, but we sell enough of those that it still pays for itself, and it's still a plenty good fundraiser and a really good experience for the kids too, to do that. But yeah, we really like to do plant sales, and they're the Grow Getters group, we call them, the gardening club, does lots of different things to raise money. Right now they're working on a bunch of different house plants. So that's kind of, trying to get people interested in their home basis, and then herb gardens and that sort of thing too. So they've been real excited about that.
Yeah. And that's a thing too. It's always mystified me, but I've always told people that want to start making some money from plant propagation, do ornamentals. I know it sounds ridiculous to us because we're also focused on food. It's so important. It seems like you're going to put time and energy into a plant that maybe it should give you something back, or at least half your plants should, But if you go stand at a box store on a Saturday on a nice day and just watch the garden center and watch people check out, for every fruit tree, nut tree, and vegetable plant that leaves, 4 or 5 flats of begonias and marigolds and whatever else will leave. And, you can fight trends or you can harness trends. And I definitely get the idea of houseplants, ornamentals, et cetera, being in some ways a better moneymaker. And it's interesting you say that, though, because we're in a low income area, but people will buy a houseplant before they'll buy a food producing plant. It's kind of crazy.
They will. I feel like a lot of people, just think like, oh, I don't have a backyard, I can't plant stuff. So we've had a lot of container gardening workshops where you can grow a tomato plant in a 5-gallon bucket. You can grow in a mineral tub, whatever. But yeah, people feel like, well, I live in an apartment, so I can't do a whole lot. You know how many crazy yahoos in New York City have 3 foot of balcony space that grow just a ridiculous amount of food on their balconies. And so it's just trying to get people to think creatively too. People are set in their ways, and that's fine. But just trying to keep pushing the boundaries there of what they think they can do versus what you can actually do. So yeah,
you just reminded me of something all the way back at the beginning of the show. Somebody sent me some stuff with Bill Mollison and Jeff Lawton, and that sort of really kindled. I was always a gardener and what have you, but that really pushed me into permaculture. And I can't remember which video it is, but it's a video with Bill in it. And it's not the Global Gardener series. He's out on this little patio like you just described. And he throws together this garden in about 5 minutes. And it even had like a little fish tank and frogs in it. And he was growing sweet potato vine up a trellis and all. I need to find that for people and kind of resuscitate that. It might have been in grave danger of failing food. It might have been on that. I don't know. But it's exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
But here we have this like 3 foot by 8 foot terrace. It's not even got that much solar exposure. And all of a sudden he's stacking food everywhere in it.
Right.
And that is something that people need to realize that they can do. And container gardening, I agree with you, is one of the greatest things for busy urban people, because not only can we grow in the container, we can turn the container into a wicking bed. And that means we have to water once or twice a week instead of twice a day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can go with that. And just because you don't have the space to do an acre or whatever of peppers, tomatoes, the whole shebang, what can you do to bring one thing to your plate every single day? And that's what we try and instill in the kids, is like, maybe it's an herb that you grow chives once, and then you have it as a perennial every year, and then you can throw that on your eggs every day. Like, what can you do to add some green to your life, not just being stuck with cardboard boxes of garbage that you go down the middle of the grocery store. Like, what can you actually grow to benefit you as a person and benefit your health? So
that's like the key component to this with the program you've been running, which is to table. So you mentioned something like chives, or if you look at something like basil, people grow basil. Okay, I got some basil, that's nice to throw a leaf on top of my food. You teach them how to take a blender or a food processor and make pesto out of it, brown some chicken and toss the chicken in pesto. All of a sudden, well, that's a weekly meal now. My wife puts freaking pesto on steak. I no, I don't like that, but she can do what she wants. We do cauliflower rice, keep carb count low, and we'll do pesto on cauliflower rice. And that is like, if you can't cook all the stink out of cauliflower enough for you. Put pesto on it and you'll be good. I don't really care for the smell of cauliflower. That's like cook the crap out of it in ghee and cook that stink and that moisture out of it. But then let's throw a couple tablespoons of pesto on it and toss that. And I think that like that's the kind of thing. And I want to talk a little bit about the kids here and the impact on them, because what I've noticed like with my grandkids is they don't get excited about eating anything else that's junk food unless they grew it.
Yeah.
When they actually grew it, they're like, oh, wait, I can eat that. Like, so, I mean, what has been kind of the impact that you've noticed on the kids themselves?
Yeah, for sure. So when I first started, we kind of started up, there was an old salad bar that was stuffed behind the stage, and I pulled that out. It wasn't working. We just threw ice on it, but we started growing our own greens in the greenhouse. And people at first were like, I'm not so sure about that. But then we started to see that we had to plant consistently 40% more for every week because we were running out all the time. And that was for probably a period of 2 years until I feel like I had my first child, and then I wasn't at school so much right after that happened. But, we were consistently increasing the amount of plants that we were growing because we couldn't keep up with it after, you get one kid that starts in on it, and then, then the next one starts figuring out that, oh, this is okay to try. And we live by the phrase of don't yuck someone else's yum. And so just because you don't like it doesn't mean someone next to you won't like it. And so just trying to get people to be kind to each other and, try new things. And if you don't like it, oh, well, go try something else. Shut up. Don't say anything. You're ruining the experience for everybody else. So, we go by that. But, and sometimes I do secret things, like I cooked up, beef tongue taco, and I called it tacos de lengua. And, the kids were like over the top, like, this is the greatest thing I've ever had. And, then I said what it was, and the kids are like, I don't care. I'm going to eat it anyway. So, just getting kids to try it has been a big step. It's really increased our fruit and vegetable consumption here at school. We've seen that happen. More and more kids are getting dirty in the garden. They're okay with that. They ask constantly to go out to the greenhouse, and they're kind of bummed, honestly, when I'm like, no, we're staying in today. It's blizzarding outside. I'm not walking across the parking lot to get to the greenhouse with all of you. But kids really like that. And we've seen them trying more and more stuff and being okay with things that are not the bland tan color, adding different colors on their plate, purple carrots, yellow carrots, things that are kind of out of the ordinary. They're okay with trying now. Whereas when I first came in, that was like, no way, we're not going to do that. That's disgusting. But yeah, they've come a really long way. And, actually the first class that I had as kindergartners when I first came in just finished their 6th grade year in our building. And, a lot of those kids are like, I wouldn't have tried half the stuff without you pushing us to do that. And so that's been really impactful and really, really neat to see that they've kind of changed their taste buds based on what we've done here. So,
and you kind of plowed right through a point that I think is really important about basically not grossing out or icking out on somebody else's yum. I think is how you phrase it. And I can't tell you as a grandfather how important that is, because my grandkids will try anything and they go home and tell their mom that they tried it and they liked it. And she's very picky eater, and they might come back and then not want to eat it again right away because mom said it was gross. Like, don't do that. Like, if you have any inhibitions about your diet, keep them to yourself, right? Unless you think it's like dangerous for them to eat it or something like that. Like, if a kid wants to try something, be all in on it. Don't hand down your culinary bias. Right. Try to expand the culinary horizon of your kids, because they're the ones going to make all the decisions in the future. And there's so many of us, and we don't even realize maybe that the reason we're that way is somebody did it to us. And I think that happens, and people don't even think about it. They just, oh, ill, or, oh, that's gross. You don't even know what it is. And then you're transferring this bias to another person. I think part of understanding that with kids is realize they're tiny humans. Right. They're tiny humans. Babies are super tiny humans, and we should always treat them, to some degree as our equal, because they are. We also have authority over them, so they don't kill themselves or something, because kids are, especially when they hit about 4, they try to kill themselves on everything in the house. But overall, they're still tiny humans, and we need to be mindful of our words with them, because they're also at the state where their mind is most susceptible to programming. And whether we understand that or not, as parents, grandparents, family, we are the most influential voices in their head.
Most definitely. Yeah. And we see that over and over again, that, you know, the more that you're positive about this, this is so good. How about you try that? Did you try this? And getting kids to talk positively about their food has been, you know, one of the best things. And yeah, like I said, the phrase, don't yuck someone else's yum, is just like, and we all wait to eat together. We say, bon appetit, let's eat. So that way we all try it together. So it's not like half the class, you know, tried it already and they already made up their mind, and the other half of the class doesn't have it. So, you know, just structuring that in a way that,
because then you get a poultry phenomenon, mimicry. If the first couple of kids didn't like it, nobody likes it, right?
Right.
And if the first couple of kids did like it, then everybody's pretending they liked it, you know, right? Like monkey see, monkey do applies to humans more than monkeys, I think.
Exactly.
There was a point and I lost it. Hopefully it'll come back, then I'll move on with my outline here. You're making a career change. Can you know, I know you still are employed, so, you know, you might limit some of what you'll say, but what can you say about why you've decided to do that and what that looks like?
Sure. So, you know, the budget is tough in a public school system. And since it's not a requirement to have a gardening class in the school, teachers have banded together. They've said what they want to say to the school board as far as like what an impact that this has made on the community and with their kids. And there just isn't much wiggle room in the budget to do more than a half-time employee right now. So our family is deciding to kind of move forward with doing all the things that I'm doing at the school, because we see that it's a benefit to the kids and the community members, and really stepping away from the public school world and doing that as a homesteading school, kind of, I don't know, along the lines of like Nicole Sauce and you guys that have different classes and different programs that you invite people to your farm and do things. So that's what we're going to be trying to do. I started a blog over winter break. I told the kids as a challenge, part of their Ag Innovation Showcase project was you need to come up with a way to better yourself, whether that's figuring out how to use Instagram or YouTube or just labeling stuff from an engine, whatever it might be. But if you do that, I'll do that too. And so my test to them was that I was like, well, I'm going to start a blog over Christmas break. So that's what I ended up doing. And so I started the Iowa Family Gardening Homestead. Not a lot on there yet, but with summer well and underway, you know, there's a lot of content that I'm working on, and I'll be transferring a lot of videos that I've done on the school Facebook page and transferring that to YouTube, just how-tos of beekeeping, of plant propagation, of just all sorts of different topics that we've done. I've even done a butchering class where I had someone record it while we did that. So we'll see if I can get that up on YouTube or not, or if I'll get flagged and taken down. But I feel like there's, you know, a lot of stuff that I've done throughout the years that the kids have enjoyed, and just bringing that not only just to this community, but our county and the surrounding counties, and just trying to make more of an impact rather than just in our small community here. So that's kind of our goals moving forward, and doing that and expanding the blog, and hopefully someday creating an event center where we are able to house all of these things in one place, with a greenhouse and a storefront with Iowa-based goods, and having classes and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
So you kind of want to build that as like a local business onto itself now that would probably work with kids and adults both, and continue this education in the private sector, I guess would be the way to put it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense the way you said that. Yeah. Not just this little community, but yeah, just reaching out further because there are a lot of adults that say, oh, I wish I had the opportunity to learn how to do this or that, or I wish I had the opportunity to learn how to cook from scratch. And, you know, so there's a lot of need out there, and a lot of need in our part of the state. There's not a lot of like local food programming and things going on in our kind of corner of the state. And so I feel like there's a big push to educate people. And that's always what I feel like I've been gifted with, is being able to educate people well. And yeah, I feel like maybe it's just time to move on and expand what we're doing to other people and touch other people's lives that way.
I mean, there are some real advantages to it. I mean, you have pretty much total freedom within like common sense business practices and things like that, but you have a lot more freedom. The other side is you're going to have enough revenue to fund it.
Sure. Yep.
But if there's a demand for a thing, generally a revenue solution can be found. And the value of total freedom and being able to adapt the program to the group, because I can see this going somewhere like maybe you have something that's really geared toward kids, but maybe you have something that's geared more toward young adults, or maybe you have something that's geared toward adults and their kids where they can come do something together and learn about this. And I think there's a real opportunity in this whole line of thinking, because there's so many people, they think about farming or whatever, and they want to get huge pieces of land and all. Well, huge pieces of land are generally dedicated either to, grazing ruminants or something like that. But more often they're dedicated to like commodity crops. And the only way to make money with commodity crops is to grow an absolute total crud ton of them and then sell it to the commodity market. Like that's corn, beans, potatoes, rice, all that stuff, right? But what people are actually lacking access to is fresh produce, fresh vegetables, and things that you can do with like small scale livestock, or understanding things about, like you mentioned, venison a couple times. There's, you mentioned Nicole sauce. Nicole has a freezer full of deer meat every year.
Right.
Never kills a deer. Not because she's opposed to it, because she doesn't have to. People bring her the deer. She butchers the deer. They get half the meat. She gets half the meat. 5 or 6 people do that. You have a full freezer. Right. Exactly. So like there's opportunities for this where we don't need 40 acres or 15 or 5. I got 3 and I use about 3/4 of an acre intensively managed, if that. And the ducks do whatever on the rest of it, because I'm old. I don't want to work that hard anymore, right?
Right.
You can't plow here, so there's no field cropping or anything like that. So I think there's a huge opportunity in making people aware that, because you mentioned people with a balcony, at least I'll give them, even though I know they can do something, I'll give them some level of a pass. People that tell me they don't have any land, and then you talk to them and you're like, well, I have a little suburban lot and it's like, 1/10 of an acre or 1/4 of an acre. I'm like, oh my God, the amount you could do with that is like, the stuff you would grow, it's more than you can use. You're not going to necessarily produce enough to like sell to restaurants or something like that, but you will be giving food away, because what'll happen is maybe you can't grow all your food, but like what grows well for you, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, you will have such an abundance of that. You'll get tired of preserving it. And I mean, that's how I grew up. I used to be sent off with grocery bags, old school paper ones, full of produce toward the end of the season, because my grandmother's like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done. I've canned, I've made chow, we froze, like, go give this. And she'd just write family names on it. I'd be carrying that around. And we had about a 1/4 acre garden. So we had a big garden. But that definitely taught me how much relatively small piece of land can produce. And I think that if people started to tune into this, there's my pun, tune into this on the Survival Podcast. But if they started to become more attuned to this, they'd realize how big of a difference it can make in their lives, because everybody's just bitching is the term for it, about expensive prices on things right now. You want to know what's expensive? Go look at greens, like organic lettuce, spinach, arugula mix in a grocery store by the pound, and compare it to ground beef. And then you start to realize like there's a significant amount of money that goes into this. And so either people spend a lot of money on it, or they don't have the money, so they don't eat it. So they lack that component of their nutrition, or they buy the absolute lowest grade garbage. So they go buy lettuce that was probably sprayed 3 days before you bought it with insecticide, and they think they can wash it off or something, or they're living all on, grain-based diets of high storable, high commodity, cheap food. And they could be eating the highest quality food that's available anywhere. And they could be doing it from their own backyard. And no matter where they are, there's something they could be doing like that.
Oh, definitely. I come back to this a lot. It's like, well, how many hours do you spend mowing a week? Well, could you turn that into some edible ground? I mean, you're not a cow. You're not a sheep. You can't turn over that grass into something that you can use. So like maybe, just maybe you turn some of that grass into something that you can eat. And so, I feel like, there's a lot of room to literally grow things, but also grow your knowledge and just, so what if it doesn't work the first time? Try it again. There's been a lot of times it's like, well, the first time that we grew lettuce, it didn't really work worth a crap because I didn't have enough soil in the depth that it needed. So like figure that out. So put it in a tray versus into little packs, figure out what works for you and your climate. But just keep trying, and just because something dies the first time doesn't mean that you're bound to kill everything. It just means that you haven't figured out how to raise that plant yet. And so just keep trying and keep working on it. So
if somebody grows it near you, it grows near you. You just ain't cracked the code yet. We got to stop. We actually have to start thinking like we teach kids to think. Like I remember the first time my son, he went to play basketball. So he took him to a court, and they didn't even have the lower rims they had. It was all 10-foot rims. And he was 6 or 7 and short for 6 or 7. And the first couple times he threw the ball, it didn't even touch, get to the height of the rim, right? And he was so discouraged. I'm like, well, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think you were going to come out here and be Michael Jordan, right? The day
one,
you picked
obviously.
Up the basketball, like you're going to have to work at this and develop the skill. And then so we teach children that, and then we turn around and go, oh, it's too hard. Like we do the exact opposite of what our advice is. Like, so you tried to grow lettuce and it didn't work. A pack of lettuce seed is 99 cents. Shut up and plant some more lettuce.
Right.
And that fearless nature is like everybody that successfully ends up producing a significant amount of food for themselves. We all went through that. I mean, I'd like to say I didn't because I grew up with a grandfather teaching me how to do all the gardening and do everything naturally and all. And it worked. And I really knew what I was doing in Pennsylvania. And then so we moved to Texas. And then I'm like, I know, I'll plant a garden. And literally everything died. My first garden was like, I think tomatillos grew and ate the rest of the garden. And like I got blight on the tomatoes. I put the certain seeds out too late in the season when it was already like surface temperatures like 105 degrees. Like even just a move in geography will set you back until you figure out how to adapt. So anybody that thinks like, the reason that someone like me grows all the food that I grow now is I have like a special thumb and I touch it and it all grows. That's not how this works. You always have to adapt to your surroundings, your situation. And then you're like, I found this new food in the seed catalog. This looks awesome. When you grow it, it never looks like that atomic grape tomato on the front of the Baker Creek catalog the first time. It just doesn't.
It does not.
Like that guy airbrushed it before you put it on there or whatever. Like it's going to take time. But it to me, it's so worth it because that access to that food that's out there, it's food I don't want to pay for because it's expensive. And what I will pay a lot of money for, I can't get what I have. Right? I'm growing a zucchini from Costa Rica right now. I don't know what store I would go to get that. It's insane. And the vine borers don't kill it so far.
There you go. Yeah. Just keep trying. And, just because that one variety of whatever didn't work out, like you said, a pack of lettuce seed is 99 cents. Maybe you don't have the right kind of soil mix for your area. Maybe it dries out, has too much bark or peat moss in it, whatever. Try a different kind. And, just keep working at it. Just, you don't have a black thumb. Yeah. You aren't born into the black thumb era. Like you can have a green thumb if you just keep working at it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing like is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So like I'm all about starting your own plants from seeds and all, and some things are much better direct sow than transplanted. But starting seeds 2 months before your last frost date in a seed starting system where they won't die is a skill set. Making compost is a skill set. Growing vegetables is a skill set. You don't need to take on all these new skill sets at once. If you have someone local to you, like your program, and you can buy in your pepper and tomato plants your first year and focus on how do I make good soil? How do I mulch? How do I take care of the plant through the season? That's all you need to do in year one. And what I see is people, they want to go 100% full on, glorious permaculture level production, not rely on anybody. That's a fine destination. Out of the starting blocks, you're probably going to stumble right onto your face. And so pick, a couple, 3 skill sets to learn in a year well is probably enough.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, we definitely dabbled in that at school where it was like, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. Yeah. Well, then it's like, well, that led to me getting burnt out because I was trying to figure out how to do 18 things really, really fast. And well, I think that's anybody, you try to learn too many things too quickly and you just get burnt out on, oh, I didn't do anything right because you couldn't focus on the 3 things that you could have to make one thing work right, So yeah, just taking it slow. And that's what we've learned too with like bees. Like we didn't add on bees until after we had mastered the monarch butterfly thing, So just, get one thing down pat before you move on to the next. And then it'll be like second nature to you. Just like, the first time that you cook a hamburger, it might not go super smoothly, but then you can move on to, oh, I moved it too quickly. I need to leave it on the grill a little bit longer. Then you'll figure it out, as you go and through time. And yeah, just pace yourself.
And even though we just kind of pitched real hard about, see things through until you learn how to do it well, also take the parts of it that you hate and don't do that anymore. I had bees. I learned everything about bees. I learned how to pull frames, identify queens, identify diseases, feed the bees, harvest the comb and all. And you know what I discovered after 2 years of doing it? I don't like taking care of bees.
Yeah.
Right.
Valid.
I just don't like it. Right. You know what? There's a lot of people that do. Okay. You do the bees and I'll do the birds. Right. Like that's the approach. And there's no harm in picking and choosing because no one can do everything. And if you do, you gave what the recipe is. It's a recipe for burnout. Like there's times I want to try a new thing. And my wife's like, you don't need one more thing to do, right? Like you don't need one more thing to take care of. And on some level, she's right. Like I'll always do little experiments and stuff because I want the content to teach from and to teach from a point of experience. But like with the bees, I got the experience. I can talk about it. I discovered I have no fear of a bee. If a bee wants to sting me, he can go ahead and sting me right now. You know what? 50,000 angry bees. I'm not I don't like 50,000 angry bees. And where I live, what happened, part of why I didn't like it, my hives continuously went hot. We'd clutch a queen, and then next season you get a swarm, and immediately you had these bees that like, you knew when it happened because you would walk up to the hive and the resonance tone of the bees in the hive was a different sound.
Yes.
You're like, it happened again. And then you're putting queens in. So I just I didn't want to do that much work, but God bless the people who do. So now I just have lots of bee habitat, and I don't know where they are, but there's wild bees all over here because I don't have anybody really local doing bees. And my ponds are just covered in them. So they live there somewhere. They're the angry, mean bees who kept crossbreeding with my bees. But when they're individuals out by themselves, they're not angry, mean bees. They're just happy.
Right.
So that's the solution. Like you don't have to do everything.
Yep, for sure. And I think, just that's really good to instill in kids too. In the more that we can teach them that maybe there's like one skill that you're really, really good at, but maybe you're really not great at doing math this way, but you can figure out how to build a garden bed out of that math problem, but you can't figure it out on paper, but you can physically see how to build that garden bed. Then, that makes all the difference to the kids and what they're learning in school too. So, yeah.
What are some of your upcoming goals and visions for like this next stage of your life? How do you see this playing out on like the bigger scale?
Sure. Good question. This is all like it depends scenario. And I feel like, so what we're going to try to do this summer. So my contract with the school ends June 30th. And so after that, I'm working on right now, trying to get classes planned for canning, freezing workshops, butchering workshops, because we have Muscovy ducks too. And so we're going to plan on doing a butchering. We have 10, 12 ducks sitting on, 70 eggs, whatever. So we'll have a lot to work with. And so we'll be doing that. I don't know what's going to happen with the bees at school, but if I do get the chance to do that and take on classes with that, being able to put people in suits, because we got suits with a grant, all different sizes. So I'd like to bring people into that realm. And, like you said, there are people that are like, I really want to work with bees, and other people that think they want to work with bees, and then they get in there and it's a huge investment to make, and maybe just opening the eyes to people that, I like the thought of it, but I don't like actually doing it. So, but anyways, starting to do some classes probably in July, August, and into September, and then kind of transitioning over, just keep writing more blog posts and getting stuff up on YouTube, kind of getting stuff shifted over to there and kind of seeing where that leads. And then, I don't know much past there, but, probably like a 10-year plan. We have applied for some other grants too, just as a family basis, and trying to do that. So we won't find out if we make it past the next round until September. And if we do, then there's like a whole nother sequence of presenting that. And, but we're hopeful for that. And given the experience that we've had and kind of in our little pocket of the state of Iowa that, we feel like there's a need, but we want to back it up with these classes and make sure that people are actually interested in these things before we make a really long-term permanent commitment with an event center. So, but yeah, that's kind of, I would hope in the next 10 years or so, but gosh, I'm starting to feel a little bit old. I was sprinting with the kids on the relay day and the last day of school, and I was like, I don't think I'm made for this anymore.
Keeping up with 8-year-olds is hard enough when they're not running. Yeah. I definitely hear you. You know, and on these episodes, I always try to give people like ideas of what they can do. Like, so do you know what would make bees come back to 9 Mile Farm? A bee man. Like, we have a pool man. That was my deal. With my wife wanted a pool. I'm like, you always say I only want more thing to do. I have no problem paying for it, but you find somebody and keep them gainfully employed, and they come once a week and take care of the pool. If I had a bee man that came like once or twice a month and saw to everything and I paid them for it, I'd have 100, not 100 hives. I'd probably have about 20 hives here. I just don't want to do the work. Because it's another thing. And so like in all of this stuff that we're talking about, if you're like, but that, like when we say like, I don't want to do that, you're like, but I want to do that because I love that thing. Monetize that. Figure out how you can go. I guarantee you right now, if I just contacted the people that I know local to me, when I say local, I mean 5-minute or less drive, and said, hey, I got this new guy. I've got bees on my property now. He's charging $40 a month to take care of your hives, and you get, 70% of the honey or whatever it would be. There's probably half a dozen that would say, give me his number now. But none of those people are ever going to keep a bee. And like all these things we're talking about, there's opportunities in. And as you develop this program you want to develop, I think it's a good idea to, one, see the opportunities you have to harvest revenue, but also like to channel that into the stuff you're not going to do, empowering people to see that opportunity too, because you mentioned it being a low income area. And the reality is the more localized an economy becomes, the less income people need, because you start developing the value locally, and money is only a representation of the value of the economy it circulates in. That is definitely part of chapter 14 of the permaculture manual, right? That money, that's why you can do a system like a LET system, which we have better ways of doing that now, but where people create their own currency within a local economy. The only reason that works is because the value is actually coming from the production and service of goods and products in the economy. So the more we can localize these things, the more we can decentralize them, use a big scary Bitcoin anarcho word, right? The more decentralization we can build into these local economies, the less dependent people become on JOB style income. And if they do have JOB style income, the further it goes.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that I feel like we can go with this, and I feel like I'm creative enough of a person to make a go of it, and I'm just hopeful for what's down the road. And just it's been a really good time here at the school, and unfortunately with the way that the things are in the state of the public education world and the things that are required and not required, then I feel like it's just time to use my gifts and move somewhere else and do something else. So not necessarily physically move, but because we have a pretty good homestead set up right now, but just doing the things that I'm already doing and moving over and up. So
we've talked an awful lot through the center and toward the end of this about the practical application, the growing of the food, the harvesting of the food, etc. But in the beginning, we talked a lot about your background, what your education's in. You have a real heavy background in nutrition and diet. How do you see that rolling into this new initiative?
Yeah, I feel like it's a really good fit, and just honestly getting people to think more about where their food comes from, then they won't have to spend so much on medicines and treatments and everything else. So I think personally, just for myself, like the food preparation side and getting people to think more holistically and not just, you don't just take a pill to get rid of this or that problem. But meals from scratch, how do you do that? What are the best substitutes, if you want to call it that, or what's the best, oil to use? Is it going to be butter for you? Is it going to be coconut oil? Depending on, what you have access to, and I think that that's really going to be a key part in that. And then just, continuing to show people that, you can grow your own food and do that. And, don't just buy buy the completely boxed method of everything, but, try and do things absolutely from scratch and grow what you have and throw in what you can. And, and consulting is always an option for dietetics realm of things. I'd have to get a special insurance license and that sort of thing. But, it's always a thing that could be done if people want to learn how to lose 30 pounds, whatever, in a healthy way, that's always an option too. And that's something that I'd be open to as well. So, yeah.
Awesome.
A lot of different options.
Let's take a few questions from the audience. And if,
Sure.
Don't be afraid to be a politician and bend the question a little bit if it's not directly applicable. Ronald says, have you tried this in other programs like YMCA, Boy and Girls Club, after school programs, et cetera? And that's what I mean. Like, maybe you haven't tried it, but maybe you could angle that more toward like how people could tie into those.
Yeah. So, like our local extension program, so it's Iowa State University Extension and Outreach is what it's called. It's quite a mouthful, but so they do some things like Pick a Better Snack, where you can do like little taste testing things, but you could always go into, I feel like where there's a daycare center or something like that, and do simple taste tests with the produce maybe that you've grown on your balcony or on your farm, what have you, and just getting people to try things. Like, that's a huge first step in doing that. Or, maybe you go in with the supplies that they would need to plant everything. You take care of it. And then you bring it back and you say, okay, for your summer project, this is what you have. So I could see that fitting into a lot of different, after school type programs, or, YMCA, 4-H, FFA, a lot of those things that could fit in well with. Mm-hmm.
We had a question that brought that in, so let's go there next about, would any of this be covered under 4-H or FFA? I think yes, but there's some real differences there. FFA is kind of its own thing. 4-H is kind of its own thing. Maybe this is a little bit more holistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where I feel like this is different than like 4-H and FFA is that it was specifically something that we hit majority of kids in our community, because a lot of them are going to a public school. They're not a lot of kids around here are homeschooled or go to a private school. There just aren't the options for that. It's a lot of times like a one income family, or, grandma and grandpa are raising the kids, whatever. So they wanted to hit the kids where they were at, most of them in this community. And so that's why they decided to tap into the public school system that way. But you can always do gardens and things like that as a 4-H project or FFA. You could have it be a chapter project where you have a community garden and you grow those things, and then you figure out what you're doing further down the road from that. But it's a, totally different, I guess, way of looking at it, but
there is a beauty in doing it through the school systems, right? So parents have to figure out how to get their kids to school and back home every day. Kids are there 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year. So they're in that location. The converse is now we have to fight for funding, and we have to work within the constraints and limitations of being in a bureaucracy. But they are all there. Whereas the challenge when you go in, like call it private sector, is, okay, now I have a different place my kids need to go, or a different place that I need to go. And if you just think about the demographic, you're talking about single income families, single parent families, grandparents raising grandchildren. You're talking about people who are freaking tired, right? It's just like, my wife, you don't need one more thing to do. A lot of people have figured that out. I don't need another thing to do. And they may want their kids involved in something like this. And if it's, Susie can walk down 3 blocks and be there, and her brother can go with her so no one bothers her, okay. But if I got to get in the car on, Friday after school and take it, like, that is a challenge that needs to be worked out. And it would be kind of a real impetus for people to start trying to go hyper local with programs like this. Like, if you live in a neighborhood that has a lot of kids, starting something in your own backyard in that neighborhood and meeting other parents and talking to them. And, I run programs, and I love the idea of creating a deliverable of some kind that you kind of talked about. Like, you go into a nursery school and this is what we do for nursery school level students, and it doesn't really matter if it's what I think is best or you think is best. The thing is that it's repeatable and it's something can be a deliverable, and then don't be afraid to charge something for it. Like, you can't work for free. Like, maybe to establish yourself, you do things more on like a volunteer basis or whatever, but at some point you've got to start generating revenue, or what you're doing by its definition becomes unsustainable unless you're independently wealthy. right? Like, because
Right.
you got to earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. And
Yep.
so I got to do something. And if I'm not doing this thing, then I'm doing something else. And now this is a hobby. And so it's always going to be a challenge, but I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And, don't hate money. Figure out how to make some money along the way.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of research that goes into saying like how much a green space can affect, kids that live in communities that are just surrounded by buildings or like have empty lots around them. Well, maybe you decide to go turn that lot into an edible food garden. And, you get, like you said, the kids that are already in that neighborhood, you get them to come down and you say, every Tuesday at 4:00, we're doing this, or, you have a walking school bus type system where it's like you go and you set up something in the community and you say, at this time, I'm going to go pick up Susie. And this time we're going to walk down the block and pick up Jack. And then we're going to keep going around, just so that way everybody's safe and accounted for and people feel like they're included as well. That might be a good thing too.
So Hunter had asked us if you'd seen changes in the kids, and we kind of addressed that. This was his follow-up. And I think what he's basically saying is, did you notice any of the kids that maybe had a lot of allergies or health issues, like their overall life improved when they started eating higher quality food?
We don't have a lot of allergies in our community. Granted, we're pretty small, but the kids that say they have an allergy, it's not really documented by science or by a doctor. And so kids will say, oh, I'm allergic to shellfish. They're not, they just don't like fish. And so you have to be careful with that delineation of, are you allergic or do you just not like it? And so that's different, but I would say, eating differently, it hasn't pulled anybody out of being allergic to anything. Yeah, I wouldn't say that, but people, since we started doing our own honey in the community, people have noticed a difference just being able to not be so sniffly or their eyes running so much, just because the honey is made from the bees are literally in town. And so the people who buy it in town are really noticing a difference because they take it consistently every day. So we've noticed that a bit, but again, that's just personal opinions on everything. It's not documented by science or what have you. So, so.
Gotcha. No, that's something that I've heard from a tremendous number of people, that local honey has helped with their allergies. And it's pretty much I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, it's not an evidence-based, it's more of a observational result, but it's an observational result from an awful lot of people in an awful lot of different places with an awful lot of different backgrounds. And when you see enough of something, there's probably something to it. K-Box says local honey works, and I'll give you that one, K-Box. Well, I really had a great time and a great conversation, Kelsey. Is there anything you want to leave us with? I do have all the links, because you're one of the good ones that when I say, give me all your links, you give me all your links. So I've got your blog, your social media stuff, all of that in the show notes. If you're watching the video live, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes after this ends, there's a link down there where the audio side will be. You can get all of that there. But is there anything you want to kind of clue people in on?
Yeah, well, I guess just follow along with the journey. And if you have questions or things that you're questioning about your community or how you can get involved, I mean, I'm an open book. I can always share resources with you that I've created in the past. So just feel free to shoot me an email or a direct message on whatever. I also recently added Instagram since I applied there. So, but it's still the same, the Iowa Family Gardening Homestead Instagram too, to just document some things with pictures and gain some interest. But be looking for the blog and all the things that are to come with the summer. And I appreciate you so much for having us on.
Well, I appreciate it. It was a great discussion. Once you get everything off and rolling and you've got something else going on, you want to come back, fill the guest form out again, and we'll have you on. For anybody listening, how do I get on the show? Fill out the guest form. Don't send me a 75-page email. I'll delete it. Right? The way I know I will. I'm like, I know you're busy, but and there's like 17 paragraphs. Delete. I'm sorry. It doesn't not good. The way to the show is through Dorothy. The way to Dorothy is through the form. And that's how you get on. You did it, and look, here you are. It works. So I think we're about to take the guest form down, folks, because we're booked out into almost August So if you want to get on this summer, get it filled out because it'll probably be Friday. I'll take it down. I'm really busy the rest of the week. Hey, Kelsey, this was great. I appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it.